Anti-piracy in gaming became an extremely popular topic in 2020 thanks to a convincing Mario Kart DS anti-piracy screen created by Joey Pearl, which caused a trend in creating your own anti-piracy screen, which I took part in. There were countless of videos released of so many games with new anti-piracy screens, some of which were made out to be real. But what about the real anti-piracy measures that get lost in a sea of fakes? In this video I'll bring up the real anti-piracy measures to the surface, some famous ones, some creepy ones, and some you would not have heard of. So sit back, get some snacks, as with 100 entries to go through in the ultimate, real anti-piracy measures iceberg. My first GTA game, GTA 4, is an action open world game released in 2008 where you play as Niko Bellic, who has to take out mobsters and loan sharks for his cousin Roman, so he's able to make money without any issues. In pirated versions, GTA 4 gives up multiple consequences for pirates to face. One of these consequences is the camera shakes more violently than the camera shake that occurs when Niko gets drunk. This definitely made some pirates get motion sickness. Another consequence pirates have to face is all the car engines are very damaged and close to an explosion. An additional effect of using a pirated copy is vehicles, excluding helicopters, will automatically move forward, which combined with the damaged engines means an explosion is doomed to happen. Furthermore, certain missions will check if the game is legit, and if the game is not, then certain parts of the missions will be made annoying to deal with or make the mission downright impossible. One example of this is in the mission The Clean Getaway. In this mission, you steal a car from Jimmy to take to Vlad's garage. When you take the car to said garage, it will not open, and if you get out the car, you'll be locked out. This is because in legitimate copies of the game, you automatically call Vlad, who tells you to take the car to the car wash first. In pirated versions, you do not automatically call him, and if you try and call Vlad yourself, he will not answer. On top of that, if you take the car to the car wash yourself, it will not do anything, which is a waste of time and money. Another example of this is in the mission Uncle Vlad. Once you kill Vlad, the cutscene you're meant to have has been replaced with an endless loading screen. Earthbound is an RPG released for the SNES in Japan in 1994. It follows Nez, travelling the world to collect the 9 melodies to stop Gigas. Earthbound carries out harsh punishments for anyone who pirates the game. The first measure the game carries out is to check if there's only 8 kilobytes of SRAM on the cartridge. SRAM is a type of RAM that while there's power to the device, it will hold data, but when there's no power to the device, everything stored in the SRAM is gone. If the cartridge stores more than 8 kilobytes of SRAM, it displays this anti-piracy screen and it will freeze. Another anti-piracy measure that is taken is if the game detects that the SRAM anti-piracy measure has been disabled, then the game will dramatically increase the amount of enemies in the game. There will even be enemies spawned in places that they are not meant to be in. Furthermore, there are locations in the game that will try and spawn too many enemies, which will cause the game to crash. The final anti-piracy measure happens when the checksum is carried out of the Gigas final boss battle. If it detects that you've bypassed the anti-piracy measures or that your game is pirated, then the game will freeze and all your save files will be deleted. Garry's Mod is a sandbox game that came out in 2010 on Steam. In the game, players can alter objects in the game with the use of the physics and tool gun. If the game is pirated, it gives a unique message which says unable to shade polygon normals, along with an error code which is the user's Steam ID. Pirates would end up posting this error and its error code to forums, which resulted in them getting banned from the forums and being laughed at in the process. Mirror's Edge is an action game released for the Xbox 360 and PS3 in 2008. The game is about Faith Connors, who transports messages with the use of parkour while avoiding the government catching her. In Mirror's Edge, if a pirated copy is detected, then the player will lose all momentum before making the jump, which means if they try and clear the jump, they'll fall straight to their death. As players need to build enough momentum to jump and clear gaps, this means the player cannot even complete the game's tutorial. Batman Arkham Asylum came out in 2009 and is the first Batman game in the Arkham series. In the game, you play as Batman and take on foes with Batman's tools and abilities. The foes he faces include the Joker, Bane, Killer Croc, Poison Ivy and Scarecrow. In the game, Batman has the ability to glide with the use of his cape, which allows him to get across large gaps. It is even needed to complete certain sections of the game. However, in pirated versions of the game, Batman is not able to glide, meaning players who have pirated the game are not able to progress. As pirates thought this may be a glitch, they post this issue to forums which outed them as a pirate. Crisis Warhead is a first-person shooter released in 2008 where you play as Sergeant Michael Sykes. who is fighting against North Koreans and extraterrestrial enemies on the other side of Lingshan Islands. In Crisis Warhead, if you pirate the game, instead of shooting out bullets, you shoot out chickens at your enemies, which would be a more fun alternative, except these chickens do no damage at all. Serious Sam 3 is a first-person shooter released in 2011. The game involves Sam, Serious Stone, who takes on Mental's alien army in Egypt. In pirated copies of Serious Sam 3, a massive red scorpion-like creature chases you until it kills you. It is also immortal, so you can't stop it and progress, unless you use cheats, but even then it'll keep coming back until you get to the museum. Another measure that takes place is within the 5th level of the game. The game will make it so you're permanently looking up and spinning in circles. Furthermore, the game does not save at all, even during checkpoints. This means if you die, you must start from the beginning. The Secret of Monkey Island is a point-and-click adventure game released in 1990, where you play as Guy Brush, who wants to become a pirate, and to become one he's given free trials by Melee Island's pirate leaders. The game came with a physical card wheel called the Dial a Pirate wheel, which had faces of pirates with codes, and when you turn the wheel, the faces shift position. Before you can start the game, there's a face on screen and a requirement to input a code. To get the code, you must match the face on the screen to the face on the physical wheel, and underneath said face will be the code that you need. Obviously, if you lost a wheel, or you got a second hand, or if you pirated the game, then you couldn't play the game at all. Spyro Year of the Dragon is a 3D platformer that was released in 2000 for the PlayStation 1. You play as Spyro, who needs to get back the magical eggs from an evil sorceress by travelling to the Forgotten Realms. If the game detects it has been pirated, then a lot of effects will occur. The first one is Zoe, who will let you know that the game has been hacked, and she'll say, "I'm sorry Spyro, but you seem to be playing a hacked version of this game. This may be an illegal copy. Since this copy has been modified, you may experience problems that would not occur on a legal copy." Also, the game will have the pause button disabled and continuously soft lock. On top of that, in PAL versions of the game, the in-game language will randomly change, which is very inconvenient unless you're multilingual. Furthermore, when you leave a level, you'll be transported to a random stage instead of the home hub world level. The final measure I'll be covering is in the final boss fight of the game. It will start the same as normal, but not long into the fight you'll be booted back to Sunrise Spring Hope stage, but all your progress will be undone. On top of that, if you have a memory card in the PS1, it will be wiped. If you'd like a more in-depth look into Spyro Year of the Dragon's anti-piracy measures, I would recommend Tech Rule's video on it. It's really interesting and informative, so definitely check it out. Alan Wake is an action game released in 2010 where you play as, well, Alan Wake, as he tries to discover why his wife has disappeared during their vacation in Bright Falls. If you're playing a pirated version of Alan Wake, there's no change to gameplay at all except Alan's face with an eye patch on it throughout the game. It's a way that the game lets you know that it knows you've pirated it. Sims 4 is a simulation game released in 2014 where you're able to create characters called Sims. You can customise how they look and their personalities. Players can also customise and create houses for the Sims. The player can watch as the Sims interact with other Sims and objects, and you're also able to choose what the Sims do. In Sims 4, when a Sim does something that shows explicit parts of their body, such as shout or go to the toilet, those areas will be pixelated. However, in pirated versions of the game, when your Sim is first censored, instead of the pixelation going away after finishing the activity, it will stay. Then if they do another thing that involves being censored, then more pixels will appear on the screen. This will continue until the entire screen is completely pixelated. Game Dev Tycoon is a game that was released in 2012 for PC and later came out on Switch in 2020. In the game you have to create your own games. The developer Greenheart Games leaked a cracked version of the game and 93.6% of players will play in this version instead of the legitimate version. However, this copy is not the same as the legitimate copy, which players would discover after a couple of hours. Players would get a message that says, "Boss, it seems that while many players play our new game, they steal it by downloading a cracked version rather than buying it legally. If players don't buy the games they like, will sooner or later go bankrupt. If the player keeps playing the game, their company will eventually go bankrupt due to there being a decrease in sales from all the piracy." This was quickly posted on forums by pirates asking for help and complaining about the pirates in the game, which was very ironic. Michael Jackson The Experience for the DS is a game released in 2010 where you tap circles to the beat in Michael Jackson's greatest hits. If the game is pirated, then when you select a song, Venezuelan noises overpower the music and the game freezes when paused. Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Quest is a platforming game released in 1995 for the SNES. You play as Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong, who need to rescue Donkey Kong from King K. Rool. Donkey Kong Country 2's anti-piracy screen shows the game's game over screen where Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong are in jail, the only source of light is a barred window. There's also text on the screen that says an irregularity has been detected. please turn the power off, wait 10 seconds, and then turn the power on again. Furthermore, the song Crux March is playing in the background, making the whole presence of the anti-piracy screen feel eerie. This screen is displayed if the boot state test, stack test, RAM test, or the SRAM size test fail. The reason this text appears is to give the benefit of the doubt, as false positives for stack and RAM tests can happen. While this message is being displayed, the string "a thief" is added to the beginning of the SRAM. Once the game is booted up again, and if any of the tests fail again, as the game knows it was a second try due to the string "a thief" being saved in the SRAM, a different message will appear on screen. It will say, "This product will not operate when connected to a device which makes unauthorized copies. Please refer to your instruction booklet for further information." Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble is a platformer for the SNES released in 1996. The game has Kiddy Kong and Dixie Kong going to save Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong from King K. Rool. The way the anti-piracy measures carried out is nearly the same as Donkey Kong Country 2. The two differences are the game over screen had Kiddy Kong and Dixie Kong in a crib instead of Dixie Kong and Diddy Kong in a jail cell, and instead of the string "thief" being saved to the SRAM, the string 0x2863292031393936 is saved instead. The Witcher 2 Assassins of Kings is an RPG game released in 2011. He plays Geralt, who is one of the last Witchers. He's been drafted as the personal bodyguard of King Fortest, who's in battle against the Baroness. If the game was pirated, then CD Projekt Red used to send letters to pirates by tracking the IP addresses and telling them to buy the game. They stopped, however, after getting feedback from the community, a lot of which were people who bought the game, saying that they could be falsely accusing people of pirating the game and it's too extreme. There's also a less extreme anti-piracy measure that occurs when you're making love with a woman. Their face is swapped to Marietta Loredo, who is an old woman. This may be a punishment for most pirates unless they're into gilfs. The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks is a game for the DS that follows Link travelling by using the Spirit Train with Zelda to explore New Hyrule to stop Demon King Malladus from waking. If piracy is detected, then the controls that are needed to control the train will not appear on the right side of the screen, meaning the player cannot progress. Gold Rush is a game released in 1988 for computer systems where you play as Gerald Wilson, who needs to meet his brother in Sacramento just before the California Gold Rush. There are many ways to get there that have their own twists and turns. Gold Rush has an anti-piracy measure where the game will ask the player, "California's first public library was established in this town. Here's a hint for you. On page 36, try reading the fourth paragraph." The player would have to look for this in the game's manual. If the player had pirated the game or lost the manual, and then inputted the wrong answer, then the game would cut to an unsettling cutscene of your character about to be publicly executed. Before your character is hung, you're able to type in your final words. After that, the trapdoor below you falls and text appears on the screen that says, "It's an utter pity that your trip to California turned out like this, ain't it?" The Talos Principle is a puzzle game released in 2014 where the player must collect sigils and progress through the tower. The Talos Principle's developer, Crow Team, also created Serious Sam 3, which had the iconic massive red immortal scorpion which was unleashed for anyone who pirated it, so it seems like a tradition for them to include interesting anti-piracy measures in their games. If you pirate the Talos Principle and make it to unlocking the second floor of the tower, you'll be trapped in the elevator. Pirates quickly took to forums talking about the elevator bug, only to have realised they just fully admitted to pirating the game. The majority of SNES games had the same style of anti-piracy screens, and most of them had the same type of wording. There would be a plain coloured background, normally blue or black, and the text would usually display, "Warning, it is a serious crime to copy video games. Please refer to your Nintendo Game Instruction Booklet for further information." Games that would have this type of anti-piracy screen include Super Mario All-Stars, Killer Instinct, and Super Punch-Out! There are some exceptions, such as with Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3. La Vida del Crimen is a game released in 1987 where you try and solve a murder mystery in Benedictine Abbey. If you play a pirated copy, you'll progress through a lot of the game normally until you get to the Abbey where you're meant to hear Franz Schubert's Ave Maria. However, you instead hear the word pirata, the Spanish word for pirate, repeat over and over again while getting slower and slower until the game crashes and all your progress will be lost.
Pirata, 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 pirata.
Baldi's Basics and Education and Learning is a parody horror released in 2018 for Windows and Mac OS. The style's based off older educational games with poor graphics. For the Kickstarter demo of the game, there's an anti-piracy screen called Bad Sim that is used to prevent people who donate less than $30 from playing the demo. When the game is loaded, instead of showing the menu, the anti-piracy screen will appear. It shows an unsettling picture of Baldy with massive pupils and a scared expression with the text. Something isn't adding up. Please reset the program. If this error continues, this may be an unauthorized copy of the game. Please refer to the manual for more information. There's another set of anti-piracy measures in the pirated versions of the Kickstarter demo. This includes in the first 2 levels, when you collect 2 notebooks, Baldy will become insanely fast and there's no way to get away from him. Another thing that happens is there's 2 principles that appear in the game. The Satellus 3 is a real-time strategy game released in 1998. In the game, you must start your own civilization, get resources and prepare for battle. If the game text has been pirated, then instead of blacksmiths producing metals, they produce pigs. As you're not getting the needed metals you need from the blacksmith, then you cannot progress. I mean, this anti-piracy measure may be a win for those who love pigs. Skullgirls Encore is a fighting game released in 2013. If you beat a pirated copy of the game, a message will display that says, "What is the square root of a fish? Now I'm sad." This message did such a great job of outing pirates, which is proven by Twitter user PsychoChamp tweeting at Skullgirls. The tweet said, "At Skullgirls, so I got this message after beating the story with both Para and Shia, and I've no idea what it means." Then Skullgirls' Twitter account responded, "At PsychoChamp, oh that? It means you should probably buy the game instead of pirating it." DJ Max Fever is a rhythm game for the PSP that was released in 2009. In the game, you pick a song and notes will appear on screen. You must time your button presses to the corresponding notes on the screen. The game will check the UMD drive to see if the game is present. If not, then after playing the game for a couple minutes, the music will start to have crackles in it, and then it will become a high-pitched sound. On top of that, the playback speed of the key sounds in the song will be randomized, and the screen will have random graphics that interchange rapidly, creating a flash effect onto the screen. If the player tries to change the song once or twice, the game will lock, meaning it won't be playable. Command & Conquer Red Alert 2 is a real-time strategy game released in 2000, where you defeat enemies of the Soviet Union by destroying their bases while at the same time defending your own. If the game thinks it has been pirated, then after 30 seconds into a battle, the player's base and units will explode. However, this can occur even on legitimate copies of the game, as it may have been a false positive. To fix it, just reload the game and the gameplay should go back to normal. Ace Attorney Investigations 2 is a visual novel for the DS released in 2011 where you play as Miles Edgeworth, where you have to investigate crime scenes, gather evidence, and use said evidence in court to prosecute people. If the game detects you're playing a pirated copy, then all the text dialogue of the Borgian language font, which is from Ace Attorney Apollo Justice. This font is made up of symbols. The game can still be played as character names, evidence and buttons will not have this font, but due to the dialogue not being understandable, which is crucial as the game is a visual novel, then you won't be able to get any crucial information. Arma 2 is a first-person shooter that was released in 2009 for Windows. When the game is pirated, then multiple things will happen. One thing that will happen is the weapon's accuracy will get worse. Another thing that will happen is the screen will become wavy. It gives you the experience of playing the game drunk without being drunk. Finally, the game's logo and developer will appear on screen, all of which is very annoying and could be avoided if the pirates just waited till 2011 as a free version of the game was released. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Ring of Fates is an RPG for the DS. The game is about Yuri and Shilinka, who go on a journey to make sure Shilinka is able to regain her voice after she lost it when she's awoken from a coma. On top of that, they must both try and stop an ancient prophecy from happening that could destroy the world. A pirated version of the game plays how it should do. However, after 20 minutes the game stops and a "thank you for playing" screen appears, acting like you just played a demo instead of the full thing. Enter the Gungeon is a dungeon crawler with the use of guns thrown into the mix. It was first released in 2016 for Windows, Linux and PS4. Enter the Gungeon itself does not have any anti-piracy measures, however the Mod the Gungeon, does. If you install Mod the Gungeon on top of a pirated version of the game, then you're sent to Chamber 1 with no weapons and you have to fight 8 Lords of the Jammed. They will end up killing you very quickly unless you go to the arena, but even then you'll face against the Beholster boss who is glitched out and impossible to survive against. Once you load back into the game, everything will seem normal for around 5 seconds and then the game will crash. Following the crash, 2 tabs will open. Enter the Gungeon Steam page and Lazy Town's song You Are a Pirate. Professor Layton in the Last Scepter is the 4th game in this series and was released for the DS in Japan in 2009. If the game detects it has been pirated, then it'll play normally up until the first puzzle of the game. When you do the puzzle and click submit, the puzzle will restart with no pick or rats lost. This happens even if you do the puzzle correctly. This in turn will cause you to be in an endless loop. Cricket 22 is a game that'll let you play well. Cricket. It was released in 2021 for Windows, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One and Xbox Series X. Cricket 22 puts in a lot of measures to deter people from pirating their game. They did this by putting things in the game to annoy pirates. This included a white screen appearing on loading screens, a field that has endless rain when the player first bats, and also the controller's batteries are dead. As pirates think these are bugs, it makes them ask online in forums and on social media how to fix the issue, which causes them to be outed as pirates. Far Cry 4 is a first-person shooter released in 2014 where you play as AJ Gale on the quest to fulfill his mother's last wish to get her ashes back to Lakshmana. If Far Cry 4 detects that it's a pirated copy, then the FOV options become non-existent, and once the player gets into a vehicle, everything around them becomes a blur. Alpha Protocol is a third-person RPG released in 2010. In the game, you play as Michael Fulton, who is a secret agent. He travels the world to figure out conspiracies against him and what is behind the threat to his safety. The game will replace all sound effects with grunts, which would drive some pirates insane and some to laughter. Furthermore, when you start a new game, once the cutscene is over, you'll be sent back to the main menu. Just Shapes and Beats is a rhythm game first released in 2018 where you have to avoid pink obstacles while music is playing to the beat of you dodging. If the game detects it has been pirated, then a message recorded by Simon Larchance, the director of the game, will play. And he will talk to you about if you're going to pirate the game to also spread the word and support the game so people with money can buy the game. SimCity is a spin-off game from the Sim series. It is a city building game released in 1989 for Windows and macOS. These versions of the game came with all-time high score sheets, which are red and black to prevent the sheets from being photocopied. When naming your city, you have to use the SimCity all-time high score sheets, then match the symbols on screen with the symbols on the sheet. Then, once you find the symbols on the sheet, input the name of the city next to them. If you do not input the requested name, then the game can be played. However, the game becomes increasingly harder as terrible things start happening to your city. This includes mainly earthquakes occurring in your city. Personally, this anti-piracy feature was not incorporated while as people just name the city the name they want to, and not acknowledge that they need to find out what the city needs to be named. Mega Man X is an action platformer released for the SNES in 1993. You play as X, who is teamed up with Zero, and they must stop Sigma's plans of causing human extinction. If the game detects has been pirated, then the game will carry out multiple measures. One measure being if an enemy drops an extra life, then you may have to repeat the introductory stage. Another measure is when you take damage for the 128th time, then random inputs will happen. For example, if you jump, the game may make you go right. If the code for this is messed with, then instead of waiting until you take damage 128 times, the random inputs will happen after you pick up a health item. Furthermore, if you pick up a power up or enter a boss stall, then you have a chance of going to the beginning of the introductory stage. Adding on to that, once 128 explosions occur, enemies that can repel bullets might kill you when they repel them. On top of that, power-ups will disappear, and if you shoot and dash, you'll have to repeat the introductory stage. If the code for this is altered, then these effects will happen 128 frames in of when the level starts. Finally, when you fall 128 times, then the next 127 jumps you make will change between normal jumps and small hops. Moreover, when you climb walls, you'll take damage, and if you fire any shots, you'll be sent to the start of the stage. Snood is a puzzle game first released in 1996 for Mac. It revolves around shooting various different snoods into matching ones in the rows above you in order to pop them. If you input a pirated registration code, then a continuous number of message boxes will display. They say, "Software piracy is punished by federal law. You should be ashamed of yourself." The game costs under $15 for Pete's sake. I wonder how many windows I should make you close. Maybe a couple more? La-di-da. Okay, that should do it. Please don't pirate software. I'm just a guy with 2 young kids who programs in his spare time. I'm not some faceless corporation. The game is cheap. I let you play almost all of it without paying. Have a heart and do the right thing. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is a game released for the Nintendo 64 in 1998, where you play as Link, who has to save Hyrule from Ganondorf with the use of the Ocarina, which can be used to travel through time. One effect of having a pirated copy is if the CIC6105 chip is not detected, then Zelda's hair will change into a pentagon, as the CIC6105 chip controls the EN_ZL2 actor, which is responsible for controlling Zelda's hair. A measure that is taken happens when the game checks if the CIC6105 chip is there, as it has the BG_ZG actor, which controls the bars opening at the end of the game. If it's not there, then Zelda does not open the bars at the end of the game, meaning you cannot complete the game. To add insult to injury, she'll walk right through them, leaving you behind. Crossed is an erotic Japanese visual novel released in 2010 for Microsoft Windows. This doesn't need any more information. There is a malicious installer of the game that, when it runs, collects data of the user, such as the user's IP address. After that, a survey is given to the player that wants them to fill out their personal information, which includes their email address and password. Then all the data collected along with a screenshot of the user's desktop are uploaded to a website to expose the pirate. Kirby's Dream Course is a mini golf game that was first released in Japan for the SNES in 1994. First, the game will check if the SRAM is bigger than 8 kilobytes, and if it is, it will display an anti-piracy warning screen, which is a typical anti-piracy SNES screen. Then, if the SRAM test is passed, then another check will be carried out. A checksum that sees if any code has been modified. If this checksum fails, then some consequences will occur. One of these being when you hit an enemy or clear a hole, you'll not get any tomatoes, which are crucial to take a shot. Adding on to that, you'll not get any 1-ups from hole-in-ones. If you get a game over screen, which you eventually will, if you select the continue option, nothing will happen, and when you select the game end option, all your save data is erased. When you finally manage to complete a level, if you've not given up of course, and you get to the final score screen, all your save data is erased and the game will crash. Prince of Persia is a platform game released in 1989 for the Apple II. You have to go through a lot of dungeons so you can defeat Jafar and save the princess. If the player managed to get to level 2, they would have to choose one of 3 potions presented to them to drink to progress. The catch: to find out which bottle you need to drink, the player would be told which word, which line, and which page you'll need to look up to find out in the manual. If you pick the wrong one, your character will be poisoned. Ghost Trick Phantom Detective is a puzzle game that first came out in Japan in 2010. In the game, player Sissel, who has just died and he's trying to figure out who he is and how he died. He does this by possessing and manipulating objects. If the game detects it has been pirated, then the text in the game will disappear. This includes text boxes, speech bubbles, and dialogue. Even the game's feature lets you reread dialogue that's been said in the game will not show. Club Penguin Elite Penguin Force Herbert's Revenge is a game released on the DS in 2010 and is a sequel to Club Penguin Elite Penguin Force for the same system. The game follows on from the previous story as you're an agent who is part of the Elite Penguin Force and your goal is to stop Herbert. If the game detects it has been pirated, then during missions the player will not be able to use the puffer whistle, making the game impossible to beat. Take on Helicopters is a flight simulator game released for Windows in 2011 where you fly a helicopter. The story follows brothers Joe Larkin and Tom Larkin trying to save the family's civil aviation provider business by taking on contracts. If the game detects it has been pirated, then some of the measures that can occur is the helicopter will not take off from the launch pad, making helicopters crash whilst in air, and act like the player is drunk by adding blurriness onto the screen. Ooga Booga is a fighting online multiplayer game released for the Dreamcast in 2001. Upon starting the game, if it has been pirated, a black screen will be shown with the words "Piracy Detected," with a pirate on screen taunting you. For Smurfs Dance Party, yes, you heard me right, the Smurfs Dance Party has an anti-piracy measure. The Smurfs Dance Party is a rhythm game that was released for the Wii that is basically just dance, but instead people dance on the screen, it's Smurfs. There are even Smurf-themed hits such as Who Let the Smurfs Out and Smurf This Way. Anyway, if the game is running on a modded Wii and it detects a pirated copy, the game will freeze onto a black screen after the opening logos appear. When the black screen appears, so will the text Meta Fortress Response. Lego Island is a first-person Lego game released for the PC in 1997. We're able to explore Lego Island, where you're able to build and drive vehicles along with carrying out missions. Lego Island has a copy protection measure, where if you try and access the game without having the game CD in the PC, a video will play of the CD spinning and an infomaniac, the creator of Lego Island, saying, "Whoops, you have to put the CD into your computer." Banjo-Kazooie is a 3D platformer for the Nintendo 64 which stars Banjo the bear and Kazooie the bird. They need to save Tooie, Banjo's sister, from Gatilda the witch, who has kidnapped Tooie to take her beauty and use it for herself. If the game detects that has been used with backup devices or cheat cartridges, then Banjo will lose a random move. This can be detected, as when these devices are used, they run their own code before running the game. As Banjo loses a random move, it can make parts of the games unplayable. However, the move is not permanently gone, as if you talk to Bottles, you can relearn it. Banjo-Tooie is a sequel to the popular Nintendo 64 game Banjo-Kazooie. In this game, Banjo and Kazooie have to stop Gruntilda from draining life from Arlo Hags as she needs it to go back to her original form. The first test happens when the N64 was powered on. It will check for the correct save type, which in this case is a 2KB EEPROM. If the game detects that the game's save type does not match or does not run at all, then the game will act like the controller has not been plugged in. This includes the buttons not being responsive and the no controller message will play. The game will also check to see if there is the correct CIC lockout chip. For NTSC versions of the game, it's CIC NUS 6105, and for PAL versions it is a CIC NUS 7105 chip. Banjo Tooie will carry out 268 checks throughout the game. The CIC chips are used for decrypting game assets, so they're needed for gameplay. If one of the CIC checks fails, then the game is not able to decrypt any data and the game will freeze. Sonic Adventure 2 is a fan favourite Sonic game released for the Dreamcast in 2001. The game lets you play through two stories, the good story and the evil story. The good story has Sonic, Tails and Knuckles trying to save the world, then in the evil story, Shadow, Dr. Eggman and Rouge try and conquer the world. If the game detects that it's not running an official GD-ROM, then at the start of Eggman's section in Cannon's core, he'll fall right through the floor. The Genesis version of Pokesy was released in 1993, developed by Traveller's Tale. It's a puzzle platformer where you have to take certain objects to certain locations to progress. Pokesy has an anti-piracy measure that checks if the SRAM is being written to the cartridge, because the game does not have any SRAM and third-party copying devices always contain SRAM, which is an easy way to detect if it's a pirated copy. If there is SRAM detected, then the game will appear to be running normally, except the player's jump will be slightly shorter. After the player plays a couple of levels, the game will stop and a message will appear on screen. The message says, "Okay, that's all the levels of Pokesy you're allowed to play now. Go and play a cartridge version of the game instead of this silly copy. Until then, bye. Traveller's Tale 93. Gimmick, or known as Mr. Gimmick in Scandinavia, is a hard platformer game with a cute green creature that was released for the NES in 1993. If the intro code is messed with, then a measure will trigger when the player gets to the 7th stage. The measure is that it will prevent the player from getting to the final boss by showing a black screen with the words "black hole." Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders is a graphic adventure game released in 1988 for the Amiga, Atari ST, Commodore 64 and DOS. You play as Zack, who writes for a newspaper, as he tries to prevent aliens called the Caponians from reducing the intelligence of everyone on Earth. There is a section where you're at the airport and you're trying to leave the country. To progress, you need to look for the red booklet that came with the game, which has visa codes. You need to input the code that matches what section and line was on screen. If you input the code wrong 5 times, then Zack will be put in jail. The guard of the jail will tell Zack that they hope he rots in jail. Then the game breaks the 4th wall and starts talking directly to you, and the rant about how you need to buy a legitimate copy of the game commences. Zack will also chip in and agree with the prison guard. Dragon Quest V is an RPG that was remade for the DS and released in 2009 for America and Europe. At the start of the game, you're on a ship that is heading to port. With a legitimate copy of the game, the ship gets to port and from there you can progress. However, if the game recognises it has been pirated, then the ship will be sailing across the sea forever and ever. Amazing Frog is a parkour sandbox game with crazy physics, which in a way is like Goat Simulator but with frogs. It was released for PC in 2014. If the game does not launch through Steam or has been pirated, then anti-piracy measures are activated. The first one is that it shows a connection to Steam not established screen. Then, if you load in the game from there, you'll be in the hideout like normal. But there'll be a shark lurking behind 3 arcade machines, and the lasers in the doors, which means you can't go outside. Rabby Ribby is a Metroidvania game that was released for Windows in 2014. To detect piracy, the game will use the Steam API to set the fake DLC ID. If a Steam emulator tries to unlock all the DLC, the game will not pass the first chapter, and on top of that, the game will open up the Steam page every frame, which will eventually cause your computer to crash. Stunts is a 3D racing game released in 1990 for MS-DOS, where you try and complete laps as quick as possible. Before you can drive, you're prompted to enter a certain word from the manual. If you input the wrong word 3 times, then the game will let you drive for 3 seconds. Then it'll display the message, "You forgot to disable the car's security system first," and then your car will crash. Ape Escape is a platformer game that was released in 1999 for the PlayStation 1. You play as an ape called Spectre, who uses a helmet to enhance his intelligence. He uses his newfound intelligence to create an army of apes so he can rewrite history by sending them back through time. On pirated versions of the game, when it's opened, a title sequence will play which can be skipped. However, once reaching the title screen, the game becomes unresponsive to any form of input from the player. If the player remains on the title screen for a period of time, as with most games, demo footage of the game begins to play. Funnily enough, button input's enabled once again so the player is able to skip this footage. After skipping, the button input is disabled once again, meaning it seems to only be disabled on the title screen, which is kinda funny. This also exclusively happens on the PAL version of the game. Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain is a stealth action game released in 2015. You play as Venom Snake, who wants to get revenge on the people who try to kill him and destroy his forces. If the game detects it is a pirated copy of them, once you complete the prologue of the game, then the game will fake load for 7 minutes. Then, it will stop, which means you cannot progress any further in the game. The Radiant Story is a role-playing game that first stop is with Ray and Marco. Stop this carry on mission during the war, and he fails the mission when he dies. Despite this, as with the White Chronicle from the Princess, he's able to go back in time and save his friends. Furthermore, Tio Liberty, prologue, if you go north, there is an impossible battle to win against the Executioner, so to progress you need to go south. Going south means you come across a blockade, but luckily Lipty and Tio give you the ability to move the blockade so you can progress through the game. However, if you've pirated the game, when you go south to the blockade, Lipty and Tio are not there, leaving you with the only option to go north. Codename Iceman is an adventure game released for MS-DOS, Amiga and Atari ST in 1989. You play as Johnny Westland, who needs to rescue the US ambassador from the Soviet-backed terrorists who have kidnapped him to hopefully cause an international incident. At the start of the game, you'll get to a section where you need to perform CPR on a volleyball player who was drowned. However, if you've pirated the game or lost the manual, then you're not able to save the volleyball player as the instructions for what is needed to be inputted for carrying out CPR are in the manual. Metal Gear Solid is a stealth action game released for the PlayStation in 1998. You play as Solid Snake, who needs to sort out a terrorist threat from Foxhound. At one point in the story, you need to tune into a radio frequency and characters in the game tell you to check the back of the CD case. This didn't mean any CD case in your inventory, it meant your physical CD case, meaning pirates and people lost the game cases could not progress. Rush Rush Rally Racing is a 2D top-down racing game released for the Dreamcast in 2009 and for WiiWare in 2012. The game contains a Grand Prix mode where the goal is to come first, second or third in the race to progress on to the next one. If the game detects the game has been pirated, on boot up a black screen with text will appear. The text says, "Oops, you're trying to play Rush Rush Rally Racing illegally. Like a pirate. Yarr." But that's no good. You may think a peg leg and an eye patch make you look tough, but girls are laughing behind your back because you're a cheapskate. Do you want to be a real man? Do you want pretty girls to like you? Then hurry up and get an official copy directly from redspotgames.com. You won't regret it. The Godfather game is a third-person open-world game first released in 2006. The game's premise is based on the Godfather movie, where he plays an original character called Aldo Tropani, who gets into the Corleone family and tries to go up the ranks while also trying to get revenge on his father's killers. If the game detects that the game has been pirated, the controls will become inverted. That's not all. When you enter a car, you're trapped in there. You either die or kill someone to get a game over screen, otherwise you're stuck in there forever. Diddy Kong Racing is a Nintendo 64 racing game released in 1997. It's different from your typical racers. Depending on what course you're on, you'll be driving a car, plane or boat. It also has recognisable characters such as Diddy Kong, Conker, Banjo, and of course everyone's favourite criminal, Bumper the Badger. When the game starts up, it will look for the correct lockout chip. For NTSC cartridges, the lockout chip is CIC-NUS 6103. For PAL cartridges, the lockout chip is CIC-NUS 7103. If the correct lockout chip is not detected, the game will continuously pause itself, meaning it's still possible to play, but it's incredibly inconvenient. Donkey Kong 64 is a 3D platformer released for Nintendo 64 in 1997. You play as Donkey Kong as you save his family from King K. Rool. When someone is saved, they can be locked as a playable character, which lets you have unique abilities and experiences while playing the game. In the game, you can play as 5 playable characters including Donkey Kong, Cranky Kong, Tiny Kong, Diddy Kong and Lanky Kong. The game's anti-piracy gets triggered if 6105 or the 7105 lockout chip is not detected. When it's not detected, the game will randomly erase your save file. Spear of Destiny is the retail version of Wolfenstein 3D. It was released on DOS in 1992. In the game, you play as Joseph Balskowitz, who needs to get the Spear of Destiny from the Nazis. In the game, you have to answer a random question given on screen by looking in the game's manual. If you answer a question wrong, you get different messages mocking you, and if you answer a question wrong too many times, you're taken back to DOS, and you're told to buy a copy of the game. However, there are certain words and phrases that can be input that let you bypass any of these questions. These include a spoon, bite me, pelt, snoops, and Joshua. Stick RPG is a flash game released in 2003 where you play as a stickman and you're able to get a job, which includes drug dealing, and interact with other stick figures. You can even buy a house. If you try and download Stick RPG from a website that is not xgenstudios.com and the game detects this, a screen with a skull and crossbones will pop up along with the text "Game Over. This game has been pirated from www.xgenstudios.com." 1942 is an arcade game released in 1984 that takes place during World War II, where you're meant to get to Tokyo and on your way take down Japanese aircraft. On the first stage, the game carries out a checksum on the ROM, and if the text is not right, then the text "ROM error, check again, 1984 Capcom" appears on screen, and then the game freezes. Alternate Reality: The City is a game for the Atari ST released in 1985, where you get abducted and end up in a medieval town with a floating gate. You start to explore the area to figure out what is going on. To check if the game has been pirated, the game will perform a checksum test. If the test fails, then you'll not be able to save the game, and you cannot enter any taverns or sleep in any inns, which makes the game extremely difficult to play as staying in inns regenerates your health. Run Free is a classic Flash game that I remember playing discreetly to pass the time in school on Cool Mouse Games. It was first released as Run for Android and iOS devices in 2013, then made into a Flash game and released as one in 2014. You run through a tunnel in space while jumping over gaps in the tunnel to make it to the other side. If the game is played on a page that is not approved by the developer, then there's a less than 1% chance that your save file will be removed. On top of that, the crumbling tiles will be removed, making the game that bit harder, and in Explore mode, the runner can be the only playable character. For Explore mode, there's a total of 10 characters with different abilities, so this gets rid of a lot of the gameplay experience. The Lord of the Rings: The Battle for Middle-earth is a real-time strategy video game released in 2004, which is based off the Lord of the Rings film trilogy. In the game, you must collect resources to create buildings, including military bases for creating armies to support you. You can also have Gandalf, hobbits, and Gollum on your team. The first anti-piracy measure will kick in at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. It will kill all of your party. Additionally, this can be activated on legitimate copies as well. If pirates can dodge that anti-piracy measure, another occurs if they make it to the third mission of the game. In the third mission, they won't be able to progress as they'll be killed. Starflight is a role-playing game where you play as a space captain who's been sent to explore space. It was released on the Genesis in 1991. In the Genesis version, there's an unused anti-piracy measure in the game's files. It says, "Pull over, this is the Interstellar Corporate Police. You're under arrest. Drop all shields and disarm all your weapons. You're in violation of intergalactic software theft law. Do not attempt to resist." Rogue is a dungeon crawling game released in 1980 when you go into the Dungeons of Doom, which is all randomly generated with a lot of monsters to find the Amulet of Yendor. If the game has been pirated, then enemies will deal 6 times the amount of damage normally dished out, which makes the game incredibly difficult. Once you die, there'll be a tombstone that says "Software Pirate Killed by Copy Protection Mafia." Mario Super Pitcross is a Super Famicom exclusive game that came out in 1995 and is a sequel to Mario Pitcross. This game was not released in the West as Mario Pitcross did not do well. In each level of the game, you need to decode a picture. If the game's text has been pirated, then an anti-piracy screen will appear with a cool background. The screen says, "It's a serious crime to copy video games according to copyright law. Please refer to your Nintendo game instruction booklet for further information." Persona 5 is an RPG game that was first released in Japan in 2016 for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. The story revolves around some high school students exposing the crimes committed by corrupt adults by forming a vigilante group. Persona 5 has an unused anti-piracy screen. The screen is black with a pattern border along with handcuffs and text that says, "Note, to access this game's manual, please visit http://atlas.com/persona5/manual. Love Plus Plus is an expansion game to Love Plus, which is a dating sim that was released for the DS in 2010. The game will perform 2 checks. If the first one fails, then the game will sit on the white screen. If the second one fails, then the game will seem playable, but the girl's affection levels cannot be increased, which stops the player from going on dates, getting a lot of girls' contacts, and getting confessions. Jamalami is a rhythm spin-off game of Papa the Rapper. It was released on the PlayStation 1 in 1999. In the game, you play as Lammy, who's running late to a concert and keeps getting held up on the way. When the anti-piracy is triggered, there'll be a black screen with a no sign. There'll also be text that says, "Software terminated. Console may be modified. Call 1-888-780-7690. Also, the anti-piracy detection is unusual for the PAL version as it triggers the Japanese anti-piracy screen. This would have definitely confused any Europeans triggering this anti-piracy screen. Doki Doki Panic is a family computer disk system game released only in Japan in 1987. You can choose between 4 characters: Imogen, Mama, Lena, and Papa, each with different abilities. They're on a quest to save Pokey and Piki from Mamu. When ported over to the West for the NES, Mario characters were used instead, and the name was changed to Super Mario Bros. 2. In official copies of Doki Doki Panic, they have the number of Side B disc header files set to 13 instead of 14, which is the actual amount of files on the disc. As disc copying tools used to rely on counting the number of files, so they knew how much they need to copy over, they would normally end up skipping the last file, which is named Dummy DT. Without Dummy DT, a black screen will appear, shortly followed by the word sorry in dark red. Then 3 dots appear one by one, which is then followed up by the text, "Please use official disc writer shop." BeamNG.Drive is a realistic driving game that's accurate handling to cars and realistic damage to the cars. It was released for Windows in 2015. If BeamNG.Drive detects that you've pirated the game, the background will change to a pirate ship and you'll get a pop-up. The pop-up says, "Ahoy, thanks for trying our game. You seem to be running an unofficial copy. Our experience is that these can be less reliable than the official release and can contain malware, so please check your computer. If you enjoy our product and want to support our development efforts, always enjoy the latest version and get official support. Please consider buying a copy of BeamNG.Drive over Steam or Humble Bundle. Thanks from the whole team." Geyser is a mix of puzzle and FPS released in 1996 on macOS Classic. You need to use the magic crystals to stop the US government from destroying the Great Pyramids as they want to build a doomsday weapon. If the player inputs a pirated registration code, then a set of 4 dialogue boxes will be displayed back to back. The first one says, "You're breaking the law. I spent a huge amount of time trying to make this game as good as I can. You're stealing it from me. Either pay for it or don't play it." The second one says, "You may think you're fighting the power by pirating software. I'm barely making a living doing this. If illegal passwords are posted ever, I can't live." The third one says, "Then I have to get a job at a big insurance company. Then who wins? Think about it. Little guys need to support each other and not steal from each other." And the fourth and final one says, "The password you enter was incorrect. Try again." Monty on the Run came out on the Commodore 64 in 1985 and is about a game where Mole is on the run from the police because he stole coal. If the game gets soft reset while being played, which can be only done via a special device being attached to user port or the use of an action replay, then an animated screen will display that says, "That was silly, no hacking please." Prehistoric Man is a platformer game for the SNES and was released in 1995. You play as Sam, who has the task of getting food after a dinosaur stole it all in the middle of the night. The anti-piracy screen will be triggered if the game detects that there's SRAM, as legitimate copies of the game have no SRAM. The anti-piracy screen will have 2 police cavemen holding up stop signs with the text, "Turn off your console deck and disconnect any attachment or game-altering device." Catch-23 is a 3D adventure game released for the Amstrad CPC in 1987. You play as a mercenary who needs to steal plans for CK-23. Catch-23 will check for Track 41, Sector 4A, and if it's not there or has been altered, then an anti-piracy screen will be displayed. The anti-piracy screen will show a policeman arresting a pirate with the text, "Thou shalt not pirate." Sega Sonic the Hedgehog is an arcade game released exclusively in Japan in 1993. You play as either Sonic, Mighty or Ray, and they've been kidnapped by Dr. Eggman and placed onto an island you need to escape from. The game has a custom version of the FD1149 chip on the PCB, which is powered by a clock battery. This makes it nearly impossible for this custom chip to be replicated during the 90s. If the ROM is on the board that doesn't have a custom chip, then when the player starts a run, the game will just scroll diagonally until the game over occurs, meaning the game is impossible to play. YS vs Sora no Kaseki Alternative Saga is a fighting game for the PSP released in 2010. The game will check if Flash Zero is there. If it's not detected, then collision detector will be turned off at random points, meaning you clip through walls and go out of bounds. Once this happens, you'll be respawned at the starting location. When this happens, some bosses will not respawn, making some fights not possible. Papa Louie When Pizzas Attack is a platformer released on papalouie.com in 2006. In the game you play as Papa Louie, who goes on a quest to save his customers from pizza monsters. In older versions of Papa Louie When Pizzas Attack, there's an anti-piracy screen that was used when you're not playing an authorized copy of the game. The anti-piracy screen was a black screen of Papa Louie in text that says, "Uh-oh, this is not an authorized copy of Papa Louie When Pizzas Attack. Remove this game from your servers. Play the game at www.papalouie.com. Tetris PC98 is a port of the world-famous puzzle game Tetris. This port was released in 1988. If any of the anti-piracy checks fails, then the game will go to the title screen, and instead of the credits at the bottom of the screen, the text "Bulletproof Software" will appear. Then line cleared sound will play, and the message "Tetris is only 6,800 yen" will appear. You can't continue on from this point. Minecraft, one of the most popular games in the world, was released in 2011, where you explore a world filled with grass, snowy and desert biomes where you can craft tools and build whatever you want. It has been out for many systems that include PC, Xbox 360, PlayStation 4, and even the 3DS and Wii U. However, for this anti-piracy measure, we'll be focusing on Minecraft Java, which is a version of Minecraft exclusive to PC. In older versions of Minecraft Java, if the session ID is not a valid one compared to Mojang's authentication service, then it'll display Minecraft Beta 1.73 unlicensed copy, or logged in from another location, purchased at minecraft.net. However, if the game is not able to connect to the authentication service at all, then this message will not display as it assumes it's offline. Pokemonster for the SNES is a bootleg game based off the Pokemon series that was released in 1998, where you play as Pikachu in a platforming environment where you can jump on enemies and carry out charge attacks that wipe out every enemy on stage. Surprisingly, a bootleg game has an anti-piracy measure. If the game text is a pirated copy, it will show an endless loop of an animation of Ash scrolling upwards. This anti-piracy measure is not on the Genesis version of the game. Chess is, well, chess. Chess is a bonus game on AtGame's Genesis systems. If it's detected as a pirated version of the game, then a black screen with the text illegal copy will display, which is definitely straight to the point. Rusty is a clone of Castlevania that was released to the PC 98 in 1993. You play as Rusty on the quest to save women who've been turned into monsters. In Sontio.mag, there's an anti-piracy screen, but it's not known how to trigger it to appear. The anti-piracy screen shows Mayor Santos with text in Japanese. When translated, it says, "Mysterious Mayor, don't copy that floppy." Vet is an open world driving game, one of the first released in fact in 1991 for the macOS Classic. In the game you drive a Chevrolet Corvette throughout San Francisco. If you fail the game's copy protection trivia section twice, you're still allowed to race. However, the gearbox will be jammed, meaning the player cannot progress through the gears. After a couple minutes of driving, a box will be displayed. It will say, "Sorry, you've been caught driving a stolen Vet." The 3D Battles of World Runner is a third-person rail shooter released for the NES and Famicom in 1987. You play as Jack, who goes through 8 worlds trying to save each of them as they've been taken over by aliens. The game has 2 executable files. There's a small file size executable that displays the anti-piracy message, and the second one is the main game but it's hidden. As it's hidden, when the game is being copied over to bootleg cartridges with the use of a copier, it gets missed and the executable of the anti-piracy screen is used as the main game's executable. This leads to the anti-piracy screen playing after you press start on the title screen. The anti-piracy measure says, "I'd like to thank you for your interest in my game. Unfortunately, you'll not be able to play this illegal copy. But good news is that you can purchase the game from your computer store. Sincerely, Nazir." Star Trek 25th Anniversary is a click and point adventure game that's based on the famous Star Trek series
Even
and was
worse.
released in 1992 for DOS. To start a mission, you need to choose 1 out of 20 destinations.
So the
and start.
Enterprise's primary
Maybe
mission
these
is peaceful
destinations are not
exploration.
present in the game,
The galaxy
but they are
holds
in the
many
manual.
surprises.
When you open up the manual,
To
you
be
need to
prepared,
guess which destination
we are
you
conducting
go
a
to,
mock
which
battle
isn't
of
too
the
bad
USS
until you
Republic.
realise that including all the missions,
Captain
you may have
Patterson
tracked
reports the
140
Republic is in
times.
position.
The game of
Jump
Jump
Jet
Jet
is a
for the
paint
Amstrad
sim
CPC.
and
I have to thank a couple of people on
When the game's
this
anti-piracy
for
gets
getting me the
triggered, the message will be
instructions.
displayed on screen
One
that says,
being the
"By
guy
the way,
called
this
Eric
is a naughty
in 8-Bit
legal
Gaming
copy."
Crew and
And as such, it's not been allowed to
Francisco
exist, so it'll self-destruct
in Amstrad
in 60
CPC
seconds.
464
I suggest
as
that you buy
we're going to
a
go
copy.
on
One of them, get House of Usher and
what the fuck did
Moonbug.
I
Also
put?
buy
I pushed
any
2
more.
anyway.
From TV animation Slam Dunk Dream Team Shueisha Limited is a basketball game that came out in 1994 for the SNES. It's a limited edition version of the game from TV animation Slam Dunk Sukyu Shigitos 2 that was given out to winners of contests. There's only around 200 to 400 cartridges in existence. If the game knows it has been pirated, then it'll basically become the bouncing DVD screensaver, but instead of the DVD logo, the Japanese katakana word for video. Typing Intrigue is a learning to type game released in the macOS Classic in 1984, where you must solve the mystery of the theft of the gold bathtub. If the game text has been copied, it'll put itself into a demo mode, we can only pay for 20 minutes per session. However, your progress does not save between sessions, meaning not much progress can be made. When starting the demo version, it will say, "Welcome to Type Intrigue TM. This demo disc gives you full use of the typing tutor for 20 minutes. Enjoy yourself." If you decide to quit before the time is up, you'll get the message, "For more information on Typing Intrigue, contact your local dealer," or 44 Inc. 1973, Landings, Dr. Mountain View, CA 9043. The address mentioned is the game's publisher address. If you do play for the full 20 minutes, you'll get the same message as if you quit, but you'll also get the words "Time's Up." New Super Mario Bros. Wii is a Wii game released in 2009 and is a follow-up to New Super Mario Bros. For the DS. The game follows Mario as he travels through 9 worlds to save Princess Peach from Bowser. For the NVIDIA Shield TV port of the game, it makes sure that it only works on the Linkcod emulator. There's a call to function, linkcod_call NVSI snippet. And if it fails, the level graphics will not render, which results in mostly a black screen. However, graphics and menus, cutscenes and more maps will still render. Postal is a top-down shooter first released for Windows in 1997. You play as Postal Dude, who believes that the USA Air Force is spreading an airborne disease in a town named Paradise, and that he's the only one to not be affected by it. If you boot up the game without the CD being inserted into the PC, and try and play the game, Everyone in the level will be set on fire, followed by loud screams. They are all running around frantically until they're engulfed by flames. Once everyone has been burnt alive, you'll be sent back to the main menu. In conclusion, anti-piracy measures have been in games for decades, and it's fun to take a glimpse into these prevention methods that can be scary, funny, or just odd. There are so many out there to explore and learn about at our fingertips. I hope you enjoy getting deep into this anti-piracy iceberg, and I hope to see you in the next one.